Hi, I'm Colin Tipping, and I'm so excited to be doing this webinar today because I shall be revealing the solution to one of the most worrisome questions of the day, which is why both men and women baby boomers think that their lives suck, and why so many of the men in particular belonging to this age group, 45 and over, are killing themselves at an alarming rate. And if you've been watching the 3 videos I put out there last week, you'll know only too well, I'm sure, that there has never been a time when an answer to this existential crisis was more needed. Even the mainstream media is talking about it as being partly responsible for the current, well, shall we say, very unusual, if not bizarre, political situation we find ourselves in at this time at both ends of the political spectrum. The other day, just a couple of days after I'd recorded the scripts for the 3 videos, 2 of the Sunday political talk shows cited much of the same research as I'd included in those videos. And they gave considerable time and serious consideration to the whole topic of the kind of dissatisfaction that I am going to be talking about here. So it really is big news and a huge problem. What they were picking up on and seeing as something to worry about for society in general was that there is a lot of research out there that strongly suggests that both men and women, particularly those over 45, are in very deep trouble emotionally and spiritually, albeit in slightly different ways as between men and women, particularly with regards to increasing suicide rates, which shows that men are killing themselves at an alarming rate, 4 times that of women. And they were obsessing about the possibility that this apparent existential crisis affecting both sexes might be having a serious effect on society as a whole. So I'm going to give you some of those statistics shortly, which you may find quite worrisome, depressing, and even somewhat shocking. You may even see yourself reflected in them. But please hang in there with me though, everyone, because by the end of this webinar, anyone who is feeling less than happy about their lives will be given a practical and very down-to-earth way for them to turn this whole thing around for themselves, so that they can begin living their life going forward with a renewed optimism and a strong sense of purpose. Now, if you are among those who are even somewhat disenchanted with life yourself, this could be a game changer for you personally. But even if it doesn't apply to you directly, I'm sure you'll see how it could help a lot of people out there who are hurting. But before I get to lay out the solution for you, let's see what this is all about and what the research is telling us. Symptomatic of the crisis men and women aged 45 and above seem to be in are the following 2 observations, one of which is less able to be scientifically verified, while the other one is very much supported by scientific proof, as you will see in a moment when I show you the statistics. So let me deal first with one that describes the plight of many women aged 45 and over. Now, while this is the one that only qualifies as an observation, I can tell you, based on my own experience of working with women in this age group in my workshops over the last 20 years, I find that this is to be true for a vast number of them. And that is that most women of the early and late baby boom era are likely to go to their death without having fulfilled their once cherished dreams for their lives, having lived much of their days feeling hurt, resentful, full of regret and self-recrimination. Based on my own experience, I can give you at least 3 reasons why they often feel this to be true about their lives. And you can decide for yourself whether this is true for you or not, or if not, for someone you know. First, many women 45 and over feel that they have dedicated their lives to supporting someone else's dream while sacrificing their own, whether that be by putting their spouse through college, supporting his career while they stayed at home to take care of the kids, or by sacrificing much the same kind of things for their kids as they grew up and aspired to have a college education, say. What really hurt, though, was that these women got little or no acknowledgement or thanks for the huge sacrifice that they had made, and were not infrequently abandoned soon thereafter by the very people for whom they sacrificed. Then again, there are those women who felt that they were obligated to sacrifice their dream for the sake of the tribe, which is to say, their family, their class, their race, religion, or a male-dominated cultural tradition, in order to fit in and be approved of. Either way, it comes down to their having given themselves away and having made others more important or more worthy than themselves to actually have the choice to live their dream. Second, many of them, a high proportion of them even, have been prevented from achieving their dream by having been in relationships where they were controlled and restricted to a particular female role, or were betrayed, let down, abandoned, abused, cheated on, lied to, shamed, or in some other way were severely wounded and victimized by the men in their lives, to where their belief in themselves was all but destroyed, along with their dream. Third, women are still feeling that they have to fight twice as hard as a man to get noticed or acknowledged for their talents, skills, or special qualities, and are often racked with feelings of not being good enough and less than deserving of unconditional love. Love always seems to exact its price and is frequently withheld as the means by which women are controlled and dominated by the men in their lives, fathers, brothers, and husbands, not to mention bosses. Finally, and I'll be saying more about this later since it applies to both men and women, and goes deep with all who believed in the goodness of their country, there's the fact of their own unconscious acquiescence and tacit support of corrupt and unfair economic structures and social systems that are designed to surreptitiously limit the individual freedom and personal power of certain groups in society. Theirs in particular, perhaps, though their sense of fairness and justice enables them to empathize with others who are put down, discriminated against, disproportionately incarcerated by a justice system that is anything but fair or just, cheated by a rigged financial system that favors a tiny minority to the detriment of the majority, and so on. Even if they're not personally or directly affected, it still hangs heavy on their conscience and their sense of how things should be, in what they were told growing up, that America was the greatest country in the world. Without them realizing it, this environment makes them feel limited, restricted, and powerless to live their dream, even if they're not fully aware of that fact. Now, having said that there's not a great deal of evidence to support these contentions, what the Center for Disease Control and Prevention tells us that 1 in 15 people in the U.S., most of them women, they say, are diagnosed with symptoms of clinical depression. 1 in 15. I couldn't find the exact split between men and women, but you can be sure that women account for a very high proportion of them. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services also gives statistics that are more specific to women, in that they show that 15% of women aged 45 to 64 experience frequent bouts of clinical depression. They also say the actual figure is probably much higher, since most cases go unreported. Then there's the 1 in 5 who don't qualify as being clinically depressed, but who are on antidepressant medication on a fairly regular basis. Again, that's for both men and women, but it's likely that more women than men take antidepressants. But I'm not really sure about that. Anyway, I'm sure we could find loads more research to support these observations, but I think it's sufficient to support what I have said up to now about women over 45 being less than happy about their lives, not only with regards to the years gone by, but to those that they have to look forward to in the future as well. Okay, so that said, now let's look at what's going on with the men over 45. And let me tell you, it's not a pretty picture. There's a lot of evidence to show that they are actually killing themselves at an alarming rate and an ever-increasing rate. This is really big news because it represents a dramatic reversal of the long-established, steady downward trend that was the case before 1999. Since then, it has climbed very significantly and continues to increase. I have some evidence to show you that proves it. By the way, I've put these stats on the PDF cheat sheet I created for this webinar, which I hope you have downloaded already. If not, you might want to do that now. There's other interesting stuff on there too. Anyway, the bit about men killing themselves in vast numbers comes from a recent report by researchers Case and Deaton, published in 2013, entitled changes in mortality and morbidity in men between the ages of 45 to 54. This was the one that the media was getting themselves in a twist about, and for good reason too, as it turns out. Not that the media is alone. A lot of government agencies are very concerned about it as well. Now, when Case and Deaton speak of men killing themselves, they are careful to differentiate between those who do it quickly and with intention by committing suicide, and those who commit what they call slow-motion suicide through chronic substance abuse, liver disease, and sclerosis. Those are their words, by the way. Surprisingly, however, this seemed only to hold good for white men in America. Neither Hispanics nor blacks exhibited the same upward trend. It was just the white guys, 45 and over, that were killing themselves. They also said that no other rich country saw a similar reversal in suicide rates. The suicide rates they were seeing applied only to American white males. Anyway, rather than trot out a load of statistics here on the webinar in real time, I've put some of them on the cheat sheet for you. Then I'll leave it to you to research more stats on this depressing subject yourself if you feel so inclined. Anyway, that's more than enough to confirm that men are killing themselves at an alarming rate, especially those over 45. Women are too, but at a rate 4 times less than men. That said, my main focus here is on the men, in view of how much their suicide rate has increased since 1999. So what in the world is going on with these guys? And what, if anything, can we do about it? What kind and level of despair are they feeling that makes them want to kill themselves, whether it be the fast way or the long protracted way? We need to know this so we can turn this around for them and all concerned. Suicide can no longer be denied or swept under the carpet. 2 words come to my mind in trying to account for this alarming trend, and not just for those who do kill themselves, but to men in general, throughout the US and the UK at least. I can't speak for other countries. Those 2 words are disillusionment and loss. Let me deal with them in that order. While the Brits have tended to have a rather fatalistic and stoic realism about how life will turn out for them, depending on which class they were born into, what school they went to, and so on, the Americans have always been hopelessly idealistic and optimistic about their own future and those of their children. So long as they worked hard, played by the rules, and did their bit for the country, the sky was the limit. No matter how difficult life was in the present, their faith in the notion that it could only get better, and that one day everyone would own their own home, have a nice car, have at least 1 vacation away each year, put their kids through college, and so on, was unshakable. This was the great American dream. So what a terrible shock it must be to the average American male psyche to realize that the American dream is, to all intents and purposes, dead and buried. The middle class has all but disappeared, millions of jobs been shipped overseas, education is no longer the passport to a good career, and so on. The chances of their own kids enjoying as good a life as they had in their earlier years is now virtually nil, and their own prospects of enjoying their golden years in happy retirement are not good either. It's likely that the realization that the American dream was over for the vast majority hit home with men just as we entered the 21st century. Now, why do I say that? Well, it was in 1999 that the great reversal in suicide rates happened, going from a hitherto steady decline before that date to a steep upward climb. Now, you think that's a coincidence? I don't. The fact that blacks have never really felt fully included in the American dream, in fact until very recently they were widely excluded from it, and that Hispanics are relative newcomers may account for this disillusionment being mainly an American white male phenomenon. The UK never had such a dream, so that was never a concern for the Brits. Americans are also very nationalistic and full of pride about their country. Having been told over and over from childhood that America is the greatest country in the world, Imagine how disillusioned and ashamed they must now feel to learn that on almost all accepted quality of life criteria on which countries are judged, like education level, infant mortality rates, life expectancy, paid maternity leave, access to health care, levels of incarceration per capita, number of paid vacations a person gets per year, etc., etc., the United States comes way down the scale on almost every one. The only one where the US comes top is in military strength, which until recently they were only too willing to project around the world, with disastrous results, Iraq being a good example of this. That the war in Iraq is now seen to have been a real blunder and a botched and terribly naive attempt to bring democracy to that country is one thing. But what is really galling about it, to say the least, is the fact that no American politician or leader of any kind has ever shown any willingness to take responsibility for it, least of all say that they were wrong. They have just done what they always do, even now. They point fingers at everyone else and shift the blame to wherever they can, and at best make lame excuses. At least Tony Blair has at last and much belatedly admitted it was a mistake. It's very much the same story with the 2008 financial collapse. With the exception of just one junior trader working at Credit Suisse, not one single banking executive has gone to prison or has been held accountable for the massive crimes they committed prior to 2007. Even though their shenanigans and greed-driven swindles very nearly brought the whole international financial system to its knees and created untold suffering to millions of people. Now, just in case you think I'm overstating the degree of disillusionment, disgust and rage that men feel about these debacles, a recent study in the American Journal of Preventive Medicine found that since 2007, that while rates have remained stable for other groups, suicides among white men aged 40 to 64 have risen nearly 40%. 40%! No one should underestimate how much damage all this has done to the American male psyche and how much pain it creates even now. For those white men who were heavily invested in the idea of American idealism, it has affected them at their very core and has crippled their sense of what it means to be American. Bear in mind, too, that men over 45 may well remember the shame of what happened in Vietnam. The big question is, however, do they get it? If so, why are they still supporting the status quo by voting as they do so as to keep in power the very people in both political parties who continue to act against their interests? It makes no sense. That is, until we factor in the mechanism of denial. Then it makes perfect sense. Men are experts at burying their pain and going along with everything as if nothing is happening or is wrong. But those statistics don't lie. Men are killing themselves because they don't know how to deal with the pain. This is where we can help, using the tools and techniques of radical forgiveness and the tipping method. We can help them to break through the denial, feel the anger, and get real about what's going on so that they can turn it around and see it from a totally different perspective. You'll see how we do that later. Anyway, that's the disillusion aspect of the crisis. Now, let's deal with what kind of personal losses men might feel that they have suffered, but may not yet have grieved or even begun to feel. I mean those losses that are of a more personal nature and additional to having lost faith in the great American dream. No, this is about the kind of personal losses that come with things like losing one's job, being unemployed for long periods of time, or feeling their job or position in the company is continually being threatened as firms downsize or get taken over. One loses one's sense of self-worth when you're told that at age 50 you're no longer employable. One loses a lot of pride if you're reduced to having to take a menial job at a low wage and no prospects, just to survive. I would venture to say that most of those who have not yet reached full retirement age or are not on a full pension already, nor yet on Social Security, are likely to be feeling that they have lost all sense of security and the feeling that they once enjoyed and took for granted of being in control of their lives. Their self-respect is in the toilet now, that the skills and experience and expertise that they had developed over the years that were once highly valued but now count for little are now fully computerized, done by robots or by workers in China or Bangladesh. So this is our big challenge. Our goal is to get men to, first of all, be connected to the pain that they're in, feel it fully, and then process it to where they can see how they need to completely change their perception of what has happened to them so as to see the good in it. Then to help transform their consciousness so that they can feel a real sense of where this kind of thinking can take them once they realize the power they have to change all that they have become so disillusioned about by seeing the good in that too. And finally, to help them regain all that they have lost by realizing that they never lost it in the first place and that there is better stuff waiting to come anyway. This is precisely what the men will get out of the program that I shall be talking about in a moment. Anyway, to recap what we've learned up to now, it's clear that for a whole variety of reasons, both men and women over 45 are feeling a high level of anxiety about their lives. They're feeling lonely, isolated, alienated, hurt, misunderstood, manipulated, and betrayed by those institutions that they once trusted. Social media notwithstanding, they have never felt more disconnected than they do now. They are emotionally adrift, and too many of them, mostly men, are committing suicide because they don't know how to get out of the funk they seem to be in because they are in denial about how they really feel. On the flip side, what they want, deep down, is freedom from past hurts. Freedom from all the generational pain that they may be carrying, from the negative beliefs that limit their potential for happiness and prosperity. They want to turn their lives around and to feel that their lives have meaning and purpose. They want to feel that they can still contribute something of real value to society, albeit in a different way than ever before, and to make a difference in the world. The women want to heal their pain and find a purpose for their lives, ignite their passion, tap into their inner wisdom, and awaken their creative feminine power. The men, too, want to touch into and reclaim their own power as men, able to deal with the world as it is and establish a vision for their lives going forward. The question is, how? How can those things be achieved? Is there really a solution to all those things that make women feel that they've given their power away and missed out on their dream? Is there really a solution to older men feeling that there's little hope of having a decent life that has meaning and purpose to it, having reached an age where they are virtually unemployable? The answer is yes on both counts, and I'm about to give you the solution and the technology to put it into effect right now. There are actions to be taken for sure, and I'll explain those in a moment. But the real secret to all of this is actually quite simple, and that secret is this. All we have to do is change our minds. That's it in a nutshell. We need to see life through a completely different lens and become aware of the reality that exists behind all the illusions that we create with our minds that cause us to suffer. As I explained at some length in the video that preceded this webinar, this radical shift in perception, which I grant you is not easy to do without using some special tools I'm going to tell you about in a moment, is facilitated by the technology of radical forgiveness. This technology evolved out of a need to find an effective way for anyone to forgive themselves and others and to get out of victim consciousness. But it has turned out to have incredible power to dramatically change entire lives and resolve situations that cause us all to feel disturbed and worried. The tools associated with this technology help us to use a part of our brain we seldom employ, our spiritual brain, the part that houses our spiritual intelligence. This is the part which enables us to connect with what Carl Jung called the collective unconscious, or what others call the field of infinite possibility, the universe, the Holy Spirit, and so on. That's something that's beyond ourselves, that we know exists but can't yet explain. The thing is, when we use our spiritual intelligence to perceive and understand the situations we find ourselves in, everything changes. Problems dissolve. Reality shifts. New possibilities arise. Relationships improve. Love replaces fear, and so on. Life takes on a different meaning, and we feel totally connected to it at an ever-deepening level. This is what I meant earlier when I said all we have to do is change our mind about everything. But as I said just now, it's not easy to make that shift. Almost impossible, I would even venture to say, without you use the tools we train you to deploy in the workshops I'm about to tell you about, all of which are designed to help you make use of your spiritual intelligence in changing your perception of what is happening to you or to others out there in the world, and to reduce your suffering. But before we go there, let me give you a tool that reduces suffering dramatically without requiring that you use your spiritual intelligence to make it work even. It's simply a matter of common sense. However, if you have a story you wish to transform using the radical forgiveness technology, this tool is a very good one to use as preparation. The tool is called the centrifuge. Its purpose is to help you separate fact from fiction. And rather than just explain it, let me invite you to try it for yourself. So think of something that has happened to you in the past that was not only very upsetting at the time, but the more you dwelled on it, the more upset you got. Or maybe you've something like that going on currently that you just can't get over. Here's some examples. Maybe you lost your job, or your spouse has left you for someone else, or had an affair, or someone died, or committed suicide even. You made a bad investment and lost a bunch of money. Your office manager embezzled a huge amount of money and you had to go bankrupt. Or you were raped. So while you're thinking of something, let me explain why we call it a centrifuge. If you look at page 3 on the cheat sheet, you will see that I have drawn a schematic diagram of one at the top of the page. Now, the function of any kind of centrifuge is to take in something that is composed of two parts, usually liquid and a solid, and using centrifugal force to spin out the liquid and leave the solid residue behind. A juicer is a good example of a centrifuge. As you would surmise from the picture, fruit and veg would go in at the top, juice would come out of one spout, and the fiber out of the other. All right, well, have you thought of a good story yet? Good. So just imagine yourself putting your whole story into the top of the centrifuge. That's the whole story, not just the bare bones of what happened, but all the thoughts that you had about it, both at the time and since, the interpretations you made about what happened, how you made it all about you, the expectations that you had that were not met, the judgments you made about the other person and about yourself, your rush to blame someone and your need to be right, how you took it personally, the feelings that you had at the time and since, and so on. Everything. You don't have to think what they were in this moment, but just imagine putting everything in the top. That big, fat, juicy story. Now what we're going to do is to set the centrifuge spinning very fast. As it gets up to speed, the facts of what actually happened will start to dribble out of the smaller spout. And only the facts. Along with the facts, though, comes the remembrance of the pain that you felt at the time about those facts. You might even feel it a bit right now in this moment. So using the appropriate section on the webinar cheat sheet, jot down the raw facts of what happened. Be as objective as you can, and it might only be a very few words, just one sentence perhaps. Okay? But now, out of the much larger spout will emerge everything other than those facts. That is to say, everything that you made up about the story. Your interpretations, your assumptions, your expectations, your self-blame, your judgments, your perceptions of what happened, filtered through your beliefs and prejudices, how you made it all up about you, and so on and so forth. Now, using the space on the cheat sheet, jot down everything that you added to your story that was not absolutely factual. So, for example, let's say my big story was that my wife left me. She didn't actually, but I mean, this is just this is just a story, okay? Here are some things I might have added to my story that would have increased my suffering. She abandoned me. I'm all alone now. She betrayed my trust. She's responsible for my unhappiness. It must have been my fault. I was not enough for her. I wasn't sexy enough, strong enough, compassionate enough. She's ruined my life. I assumed our relationship was forever. I assumed we would be monogamous. The other guy lured her away. She could not have loved me to do that to me. You can't love two people at the same time, therefore she did not love me. I expected her to be faithful. All women are the same, you can't trust any of them. And I'm no good without her, and so on and so forth. And as you list the things you made up about your story that would have come out of that spout, put next to each one of them a number between 1 and 100 that indicates the amount of emotional charge that you still have on it, or the degree to which you're holding on to it as being the truth. You can do a few of them now, but then after the webinar you might want to spend some time reviewing everything that you attached to the basic story that was not really true. Okay, so now let me point out the benefit of doing this. There is a distinction to be made here between pain and suffering. On the one hand, the pain attached to what actually happened is there to be felt and acknowledged. But everything else is your suffering, and it's optional. After all, it's all made up. Just a load of BS. Belief system. Caught you there, didn't I? Seriously, though, I can tell you that it is my experience that most people's stories comprise somewhere around 10% fact and 90% interpretation. That means just by letting go of all the fictional stuff that you have added into your story, you can reduce your pain to just 10%. So, to reduce the suffering with any story, first acknowledge the facts, feel the pain associated with them, and accept them. They are what they are. Next, though, examine every thought, belief, rationalization, idea or attitude that you imposed on what happened and declare them all to be untrue. Affirm that none of them have validity. Tell yourself that they just represent mind talk. In quite a short space of time, you will have collapsed your story down to one that is much more manageable. But as I said earlier, this tool is not one that uses the spiritual brain or that faculty of mind we call our spiritual intelligence. The centrifuge uses only the mental faculty, and the truth is, by the time you've added in such qualities as compassion, understanding, and mercy, you find yourself right up against the limits of traditional forgiveness. Now, if you viewed the preceding 3 videos, you will know that with radical forgiveness, we go one giant step further than this and ask you to become willing to be open to the possibility that there was a reason why this event happened and that it was all part of a divine plan that your own soul cooked up as one of many learning experiences and opportunities to learn and grow during your current lifetime. And in the 3rd video, I gave you one of my favorite tools for radically forgiving yourself or others, the 3 letters. If you haven't yet watched that video and learned that process, I highly recommend that you do. Now, in the workshop I'm going to tell you about in a moment or two, you'll get a wide range of tools and processes like this that enable you to clear just about anything that would likely be dragging your energy down and making you feel depressed and unhappy. once you have the basic idea firmly established in your mind, and you use the tools we provide, there is not a problem that cannot be solved using this methodology. But what about all that mayhem, war, violence, and corruption out there in the world that is getting you and everyone else riled up and thoroughly pissed off? Well, the good news is that we have the tools for dealing with all that stuff too. They draw on the same ideas, assumptions, and philosophy as all the other tools, in that they train you to see everything from the spiritual big picture standpoint. I argued in the previous videos that we humans are getting ready to break through into a very different reality than this one we're in now, and that it is necessary that we all go through a breakdown first. A healing crisis, if you will. Anyway, not only do the tools help us to become willing to see it from this new perspective, but more than that, because it's about projecting the energy of love and acceptance into the situation, it will actually make a difference. The more people we have doing this, the quicker the big shift will occur. And it's not a recipe for doing nothing. We are much more likely to be effective in relieving the pain and suffering of people if we do what we need to do, knowing that Spirit is in there somewhere. And as a friend of mine always says, God does not make mistakes. I know it is hard to imagine that just doing worksheets and using these tools is the solution to the kind of problems I've been outlining in the videos and in this webinar. But I can tell you, they work. We've been giving them out to people at no charge all around the world for all of 20 years now. And we get thousands of emails telling us that just doing the worksheets has changed their lives. But there are those, and you may well be one of them, who want more. If you feel the need to explore these ideas and powerful methods of dealing with the challenges of everyday life to a much deeper level, and you would prefer to do it in a workshop setting with me and other seekers like yourself, some of whom will know nothing of this work while others have a great deal of experience to share with you, then listen up. You're going to love what I'm about to offer you. I'm referring to an upcoming training that you won't want to miss, that will not only give you the full range of tools available to you, as well as give you the opportunity to experience some powerful processes that will clear out all your old emotional baggage from the past, but will give you the freedom to grow, expand, raise your vibration, and be in the flow of life, as opposed to resisting it, as you were previously. This is my vision for you. That is, assuming that you feel this is where you want to be. You do, don't you? Why wouldn't you want all this and more? Well, of course you would. I'm absolutely certain that you will, once I've laid out, very soon now, how you can get it and what it will mean for your life. Much more than you can imagine, I promise you, and for a very small investment relative to what it will do for you. Believe me, if you have related personally to even a tiny fraction of what the women or men I've tried to show in the 3 videos and in this webinar to be dealing with in their lives, the benefit that you will personally receive by doing the training I'm offering you will be more than you can imagine. Just imagine what it would be like to be where you have no residual grievances, regrets, hurts, wounds, or any other kind of negative energy remaining in your energy field and in your physical body. Imagine what it would be like to be fully connected to your divine purpose, living your dream, projecting your power, and making a difference in the world, just by being who you are, irrespective of what you actually end up doing that fulfills you and serves others. Imagine what it would feel like to have the kind of new lease on life that this training is likely to give you. But, as I explained in the 3rd video, not everyone will find a resonance with it. Most people are not quite ready to make this kind of change. It's too scary for them. They would rather stay stuck than make the effort to heal their lives and expand their consciousness. And that's okay. Everyone is where they need to be. I'm tempted to say that might apply more to men than women, if previous experience of workshop attendance is anything to go by. But who knows? Maybe a lot more men will attend, given the fact that all this stuff about suicide rates is coming out now and being talked about rather than swept under the carpet. It's no longer a taboo subject, and heaven knows they really do need help. And here's another thought. Since suicide amongst middle-aged men is being openly talked about, women must surely be aware that their own brothers, husbands, and friends are not immune from this kind of stress. They definitely should be worried if the guy seems depressed, apathetic, and unreachable. After all, what woman wants to lose her husband, friend, or brother by either of the two forms of suicide, just for the want of inviting him to attend the training with her, or at least the first workshop I'm going to tell you about? Who knows? He may even decide to go on his own if it works out that you can't make it. By the way, at the end of the webinar, I'm going to make you an offer that relates to this issue that will knock your socks off. So don't jump off too soon or you'll miss it. It's worth a lot of money to you, potentially anyway, but you have to be on the webinar to get it. Anyway, here's the scoop, so get ready. I'm about to give you the whole enchilada, okay? What we're offering here is a 6.5-day personal growth training called A Course in Radical Living. It's delivered in 2 parts, over 2 weekends, with a couple of months in between each one, during which there will be some homework to do, as well as some group coaching. Part 1 is a 2.5-day workshop called The Radical Forgiveness Solution, which, while complete in itself, provides the foundation for all that will follow in Part 2, though, as I mentioned before, it can be taken as a standalone event, with no obligation to go on to do Part 2. This workshop is designed to give you a solid grounding in the radical forgiveness philosophy that is the basis of everything yet to come in Part 2. You will have the opportunity to radically forgive yourself and others in this workshop and come out of it feeling great, free from the pain of the past. You will also experience the radical self-forgiveness and self-acceptance processes and be introduced to the concept of radical transformation and radical manifestation. You'll experience radical forgiveness as a simple and elegant process for quickly dissolving the residual pain attached to any of the following types of emotionally related problems, like money issues, relationship problems, sexual abuse woundings, health issues, addictions, depression, perfectionism, anger, low self-esteem, holding excess weight and feeling used, as well as having been betrayed, rejected, or abandoned, and so on. Any one of these problems can be, and often is, a clear symptom of something deep down that is absolutely crying out to be healed. A childhood wound, a profound loss not fully grieved, a betrayal or abandonment that still hurts, and so on. Most of it is tucked away somewhere in the subconscious mind, but remains active in your life in a way that causes you to feel unhappy, and is likely to keep you repeating failure in relationships as well as in many other spheres of life too. You will come to see that the complete and total solution to this problem facing many people from all walks of life is radical forgiveness. But don't worry, it's not at all necessary for you to dig up the past and relive the old pain. When the radical forgiveness process is applied to all such unhealed issues, all the impediments to having happiness and fulfillment in your life are immediately dissolved and gone forever. You will also experience a deeper level of self-acceptance than you've ever known before. And it's that simple and easily achieved during this 2.5-day workshop, using the tools and processes that have been tried and tested for over 20 years. And believe it or not, it's actually a fun workshop. People leave feeling great, happy, and excited about their future. Now, here's something to consider if you should want to become a spiritual way shower or luminary. And that is that you cannot be such a person if you're still carrying the pain of the past. So, if you have a desire to be of service in this way, do consider taking the entire training. And if you're unsure about it, you can decide after this workshop experience. But places are limited in this workshop to 50, and we just did one similar in Russia and had 192 participants, so you do risk being excluded if you wait. Plus, you will miss out on the bonuses, which I shall tell you about in a moment or two. So now, let's talk about part 2, becoming a luminary with an intent to change the world. This is a 4-day intensive training that takes place approximately 2 months after the Radical Forgiveness Solution and builds on the work done in that first workshop. It is designed to take you to the next level of awareness and raise your vibration to an even higher frequency than ever before. The goal is to prepare you to adopt a truly radical living lifestyle that, simply by living and demonstrating it, you become a luminary and way shower for others. It prepares you to live a spiritually conscious way of living that includes doing your best to actually live the radical forgiveness philosophy on a daily basis, using all the tools and processes available to you, as well as that of other radical living strategies. These radical living strategies are as follows. Number 1, of course, radical forgiveness, which is for forgiving yourself and others and releasing victim consciousness. It is also the core concept for all the others. Then number 2 is radical self-acceptance, for seeing that your perfection lies in your imperfection. Strategy number 3, radical transformation, for seeing the perfection in what happens out there in the world. And then finally, strategy number 4, radical manifestation, for creating the world that you wish to see. Once experienced and practiced, they will automatically raise your vibration, enabling you to break free of 3-dimensional consciousness and be in the 4th dimension, practicing for being in the 5th. They will expand your capacity to love yourself and others, and to leverage your power to effect a meaningful shift in consciousness in those who you touch, and to be influential in shifting the consciousness of the planet even. Not that being a luminary necessarily means doing anything other than living in a way that others perceive to be a spiritually uplifting and desirable way of being. You will simply be someone nice to be around and a person to emulate. Just by being the light, you can be a way shower. On the other hand, once having cleaned out your own emotional closet and are demonstrating this way of being, you might also wish to show others in a more active way how to do the same. This might be by teaching others how to reach that level of spiritual awareness and way of living, and by so doing, save the world, one person at a time. Okay, it seems a lot though, doesn't it? It is, but nothing that you can't accomplish, if that's your desire, believe me. Nevertheless, let me ground it for you in this way, so you can get it more viscerally. I'm going to refer back to the first 2 videos in which during the first one I introduced you to Helen. Helen was a virtual woman who I painted as the typical woman who at around the age of 45 was feeling unfulfilled, victimized by men and the world around, and in a lot of emotional pain and to some extent embittered by life. Now, for those who didn't see that video, I have given you the text that painted Helen like that on the PDF cheat sheet, so you can read it later. I did a similar one for Chuck in the second video, where I depicted him as a typical man doing his best to deal with his buried pain and coming close to doing what many of the other men are doing who find it all too much, killing himself. The only thing that stopped him was the thought of his wife having to carry on her own. So let me do this. I'm going to paint their pictures now as if they both did do the training. So let me do Helen first. You will recall that in contemplating a better future for herself, she came up with 2 questions. Number 1, how can I come to terms with what has happened to me in the past in a way that will get me free of the pain of feeling wounded and limited? Number 2, What can I do now, going forward, to give me more meaning, independence, and personal fulfillment in my life before I die? Well, she got the first one answered to her complete satisfaction immediately upon taking the Radical Forgiveness Solution workshop. We had the technology for that one. Using that technology, she got to see what the lessons were for her in her two husbands having been unfaithful to her. She came to understand that she'd attracted them both into her life in order that they show her that she needed to forgive her father for the sexual abuse and to heal that issue completely, which she did, 100%. She also came to see that if she applied the philosophy of radical forgiveness to any and all of her emotional issues, they would dissolve immediately. That is, so long as she continued to use the tools. Within weeks of doing the workshop, her energy body was clear of all the negativity that previously had been dragging her down, and there was significant improvement in her health. Her love for her husband increased, and she became able to accept him the way he is, while at the same time engaging him in a process of renegotiating their relationship so that her new way of looking at the world was honored and respected. And she was able to watch the news and put things into a spiritual perspective, while at the same time becoming an activist in a cause that she felt passionate about. Now, as far as the second question was concerned, you may recall that in the third video, after Helen had begun to see that she could see a good future for herself, she expressed her vision for her life in this way, and I quote, "I desire to find a way to develop a spiritually meaningful and empowered lifestyle that is so deeply transformational that I'm able to operate most of the time at the highest level of consciousness that I can reach, having completely healed my past, let go of all my limiting beliefs, and claimed my power to be all that I can be as a luminary and way shower for what is to come." Close quote. Well, that's exactly what she achieved by doing the entire training. She's turned her life around 180 degrees. She is not the woman she once was. She's happier, stronger, and more at peace with herself. Her vibration is higher than ever, and she shines her light wherever she goes. We helped her find her purpose, create her vision for her life, and then come up with a set of objectives that would make that vision become true. She is a real people person, so the idea of being a luminary for people who want to live life in this new way is exciting to her, and she's doing it. Now let's look at Chuck. He was not so easy. Like most men, he was not able to really connect with his feelings. Even though he felt betrayed about being let go at the age of 48 after a lifetime of working at the company he loved, and was really mad about what was going on in the world of politics and social politics that, in his eyes, had killed the American dream, he was mostly in his head about it all. Unlike Helen, Chuck had not yet really awakened in the spiritual sense of the word, at least not to the degree that he could, like Helen, quickly come to see that what has happened to him and what is going on in the world as an essential part of an imminent shift in consciousness. While Helen was able to draw strength from that, Chuck could only see things as they seemed to be. But something was stirring in him, to the extent that he came up with the following statement as how he would like to change and be more open to a spiritual viewpoint. And here's what he wrote, and I quote, "I want to find a way to look at and change how I have, up to now, seen the world as being against me, and stop feeling and acting like a victim. Let go of my expectations, judgments, and assessments about how things should be, and find peace and joy in all that I have now and whatever else might come my way to bless my life. I'm open to having opportunities to show up that would give me more." Close quote. So he came to the Radical Forgiveness Solutions workshop and was able to open up to the idea that nothing happens by accident, and that there is a lesson to be had in any experience. However, he didn't quite buy into the idea that everything happens for a reason and is all part of a divine plan. It was hard for him to see that being made redundant was perfect in the spiritual sense, but he got there in the end. However, he chose not to do the second part of the training. Even though he felt a lot better about himself, more empowered and a lot less angry, he did not see himself becoming a luminary. Though he did take home a copy of my book, Wounded Healers, which is all about men healing men. He may see in that book how he can help other men lift themselves out of despair and resignation like he was in before doing the workshop. Though he says he is open and wanting to see things from the new radical forgiveness perspective, it may take him a bit longer to really integrate it and awaken fully. Men do seem to take longer. Nevertheless, he benefited enormously from doing the workshop, and I would not be at all surprised to see him turn up to do part 2 a year or 2 from now. Okay, so yes, of course I made this all up. So, what kind of authority does it carry? Well, I can assure you I am not blowing smoke with this. I've been doing this work for 20 years, and those stories are absolutely typical of what happens to people, and I have no doubt that it can happen for you too. So, I have no apology to make on that score. Alright, so now let's talk about your investment in this course. And just for comparison purposes, let's imagine that you preferred to hire me to walk you through the entire content of the course in Radical Living on a one-on-one basis. That would mean that your investment would be in the region of $20,000, given the amount of time that it would take to do it, and in consideration of you having to pay me my hourly rate. Now, I can say that because I have several clients with whom I've spent many hours, the equivalent of about half the hours I would need to spend with you to get the kind of results you can achieve with this course. And in each case, when we added it all up, it came very close to about $10,000. So I'm not just pulling that number out of midair. I do in fact offer a special program for couples in crisis where I work one-on-one with them, sometimes with just one couple, but also with 2 or 3 couples present at times. And if you're thinking that this Couples in Crisis workshop might be the right one for you, then please email me after the webinar and let's have a chat and see if it would be a good fit for you. But that's not what I'm offering you here today. What I'm offering, and at a price nowhere even close to that amount, is an experience that is more beneficial than doing the equivalent content on a one-on-one basis. Our experience is that doing the work in a group setting, albeit where everyone gets a lot of personal attention from me, the beneficial effect is magnified many times over compared to doing it on a one-on-one basis. The group energy is a huge factor in our getting amazing results. I know this sounds counterintuitive, but it's the truth. So, you pay less and get more. That's why we call it the sweet deal. Under this arrangement, all you pay to get the best results possible is just $1,997. Or, if you prefer, 2 easy payments of $997. A sweet deal by any standard. For that amount, what you get is a course structured in 2 parts, as I've already described in some detail. Part 1 of the course in Radical Living is the 2.5-day Radical Forgiveness Solution workshop, while Part 2 is the 4-day intensive on becoming a luminary with an intent to change the world. So, if you're ready to transform your life and become a luminary, click the Register Now button to reserve your spot and receive the entire course in Radical Living. Now, based on venue capacity, this sweet deal is only available to 50 people. So you will not want to leave it and come back later only to find that it's been filled. Based on typical attendance at my workshops over the years, I expect this package to sell out quickly. So if you want in, jump in. And to make this decision even easier for you, I want to make you this sweet deal even sweeter. When you register now, I'll give you 4 very special gifts, each with a true monetary value and proven results. The first gift is a program with a self-discovery workbook entitled My Money, My Life that will help you raise your consciousness around money and everything that goes along with money. This represents a $147 true value, but what it will do for you in the real world is incalculable. The second gift is an interactive online program called Who the bleep am I? This is designed to raise your awareness of who you really are, what your special gifts are, what makes you tick, and so on. So this is an amazingly revealing program with a money value of $97. The third gift is the Radical Self-Forgiveness and Self-Acceptance Interactive Online Program. The title more or less says it all. You get a life-changing program that will release your past regrets and guilt and empower you to create a successful future. And the value of this program is $297. Finally, the fourth gift is the Forgive Your Parents, Partners and More interactive online program. Amazing things happen to you and your relationships with your parents, siblings, partners, and even workmates when you do this program. And the value is also $297. These special bonuses add a great deal of value to the sweet deal, about $800 in fact. However, they're only available today while you're on the webinar, so you need to click on the Register Now button in order to take advantage of this offer. And it's no risk to you, for we have a money-back guarantee and refund policy that covers you if you change your mind later. I'll explain that in a moment. Meanwhile, I doubt that you will have forgotten that I promised you something special over and above the 4 gifts I've just told you about if you registered today. So here it is. When you register for the sweet deal, I will give you an extra ticket to the Radical Forgiveness Solutions Workshop. That's an extra ticket worth $497, yours for free, on top of the $800 worth of free gifts, just for being decisive about your future. Now remember, as I said, there are only 50 spots available, and this extra ticket offer ends at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday night. So why not go ahead and click on the Register Now button? After all, don't you have someone, perhaps, who could really use this help right now? Can you not think of someone you could give this ticket to whose life could be totally transformed by participating in the workshop? Think of the joy that would bring you to see them blossom. You might keep in mind, too, that for reasons I have explained earlier, I would like to fill the room with as near equal numbers of men as women as it is possible to get. Now, that said, however, you're free to use that free ticket however you wish to use it. No strings attached, in other words. And not only will your guest experience the workshop, he or she will also receive the My Money, My Life workbook. So, to take advantage of this generous buy one, get one free offer, click the button to register for the sweet deal, which is, of course, the entire course in Radical Living, the 4 special bonuses I just told you about, and the 1 free ticket to the Radical Forgiveness Solutions Workshop. Now, if we were to sell those separately, that would come to well over $3,000. But bundled tonight in the sweet deal is yours for only $1,997. And if you need to spread the money out a bit, our payment plan for the sweet deal is 3 monthly payments of $665.67. Now, what about dates? Well, Part 1, the Radical Forgiveness Solution Workshop, happens the weekend of March 11th to the 13th, beginning at 2 p.m. on Friday and ending on Sunday at 4 p.m. Part 2, Becoming a Luminary, is scheduled to begin May 20th and end on Monday the 23rd. Both are happening in Atlanta, Georgia, when the weather is really nice, so go ahead and click on the Register Now button to join me in Atlanta. There's going to be a lot of fun, believe me. And by the way, for those living on the other side of the pond, I want to let you know that we are offering the same course in England, June 17th to the 19th for the Radical Forgiveness Solution Workshop, and August the 5th to the 8th for the Luminary Workshop. We'll remind you nearer the time. So now let me tell you about our money-back guarantee and refund policy so that you're clear about how little risk you're taking by registering now so as to get all the bonuses and the free ticket. So here's the deal. If for any reason you need to cancel right up to the day Part 1 of the course starts, you will receive all your money back. All we shall ask you to cover is the cost of processing the refund on your credit card. Even if you feel inclined just to book the Radical Forgiveness Workshop without committing to the whole course until you've experienced Part 1, You will still get all your money back, minus the credit card expense, if you have a need to cancel. If you should sign up for the whole course, and after part 1, the Radical Forgiveness Solution Workshop, and find it necessary to end it there and not to proceed to part 2, no problem. We'll refund you the cost of part 2, which is approximately $1,000, less the cost of processing the credit card refund. Again, virtually no risk for you. So go ahead and click the register now, and let's do some great work together as well as have a lot of fun. Okay, I think we have covered just about everything, so let me go ahead and wind this section of the webinar up by reminding you that if you do this training, you will, by the end, have fully integrated into your consciousness the radical forgiveness paradigm and how to apply it in your everyday life. You will have cleaned out of your emotional closet all your old victim and perpetrator stories. You will have no grievances or regrets about the past, just a wonderful feeling of optimism about your future. You will have remembered who you really are and what your true purpose is. You will have claimed your power and created a vision for your life that will propel you into creating a great future for yourself. And you will have raised your vibration sufficiently to begin making the shift from this fear-based, three-dimensional reality to the fifth dimension, which is based on love, light, peace, and harmony. And finally, you will have realized and begun to claim your ability to be a way-shower for others simply by being who you are and living an awakened life. So, if you want to be part of the solution, hit the Register Now button. Okay, I think we're now ready to move into the Q&A session. I'm sure people have been putting questions into the chat box as I've gone along. So, what do you have for me, Sherry?